will review the draft regulations once EPRA has finished off with them. Because this regulation, National Treasury gives a go-ahead, then these regulations will be subjected to the necessary review by stakeholders. Stakeholders, of course, include us, and we are looking forward to having a say into what those regulations look like, and particularly because they should indeed be able to support investors. So what has been the impact? Because I think that's the crux of the matter. What has been the impact of the Petroleum Price Stabilization Administration? I think the first one, and I've already alluded to it, is that the absence of a legal instrument in the name of regulations is really, and we said we need to be candid, is really a blot to predictability. I know Governor Muriithi, or was it Governor Muriithi? No, it was one of my directors, Dr. Leparan, said that you cannot give certainty, you cannot guarantee certainty, absolutely. But you can guarantee some form of predictability so that even as you're pivoting around and being agile, in the event the predictability becomes elusive, you're working from a point of known. And therefore, predictability, and we all know this, particularly in any business segment, is really a key ingredient to business sustainability, to accountability, to transparency, and to stability, no doubt about it. You may not guarantee certainty, but surely predictability should be granted. So what has happened is that in all this, because of the absence of the legal instrument, we have found that the oil marketing companies' net revenues, or margins as most people refer them to, deferring this indefinitely. Of course, we've seen what it does. It has completely disrupted business strategies and plans, and it has resulted into financial incapacitation that has led to the inability to meet investment obligations, including the efficient procurement and timely distribution of your products. The second thing is that the undue pressure on the oil marketing companies' cash flows, which is resultant from the absence of this predictability instrument, and the disruption and the pressure also on the working capital and financing costs has certainly undermined the viability of the existing investments. And this is apparent to everyone. And it does disincentivize future capital investments and diversification, because obviously you put everything on hold when you're not sure when you'll access what has been deferred, without any, what has been deferred indefinitely. Your business strategies, which are normally done in 5-year tranches and activated on an annual basis, they're completely thrown out of the track. So the lack of a clear methodology, obviously, of when the stabilization will kick in, which should be entrenched in the regulation, the timeliness or the timelines for the disbursements of the deferred margins, the management of the fund kitty is certainly a recipe for opacity or opaqueness and bad governance. So the expectation is that these regulations should be able to cite when will the stabilization kick in. Is it when the prices, global oil prices are at 100 shillings, are at $100 per barrel? Is it when the local prices are at 100 shillings per liter? When will it kick in? Because of course it has to be sustainable. When will the collaborators, the oil marketing companies, access their deferred margins and make up for the losses incurred? That is what predictability does. And we're not saying it has to be today for tomorrow, no. But some form of predictability. Is it two months? Is it 3 months? Is it 4 months? What is it? The second thing that has been impacted on the Petroleum Price Stabilization Administration is a serious exposure of the risk of fire incidences. For people who work in this sector, they know that safety is paramount. If it's not safe, don't do it. But you have observed for yourselves the people queuing at the gas stations actually have plastic containers. That is not a receptacle that meets the standard. Why? Because a plastic container is permeable. So what will happen is, even if the liquid is contained inside, the vapor will escape. So if you go and store that jerry can at home and it interacts with an ignition source, that's a recipe for disaster. And that's why you find the emergence of slum fires, you will find cars going alight. And I'm not being dramatic. The industry is here. They can speak for themselves. The safety requirements for receptacles are really, really of high regard. And that is why you never see petroleum. If you see petroleum, that's bad news. Think about it. It's explored, exploited. It's all through pipeline storage, pipelines, until it goes to the nozzle. You don't see the fuel. Then all you see is the nozzle in your tank. You don't see the fuel, and there's good reason why you don't see that fuel. Controlling the crowds at the retail stations has been difficult because the people are anxious, they're angry, so the attendants cannot tell them we'll not sell in those receptacles because of the chaos that then would come from that. Additionally, the natural order of procurement and distribution, of course, has been disrupted, and I'm sure this is no secret. You have seen the change in terms of where supply should be 60% local. It's now a different arrangement altogether. And that comes with serious, serious disruptions that have a loss element in it, and hence the importance to actually have this conversation. The other one is the serious exposure to illicit trade and smuggling, and also petroleum products, malpractices. So I will speak to that as well. But let me say this. Certainly, there has been a punishment of the compliance with the oil marketing companies because they've had to bear the brunt of being penalized in spite of the high compliance levels and dedication to keep the country supplied at their cost, even when we know that that cost is still elusive in terms of when will it be compensated. And it's also important to note that we pay for our taxes upfront, which is another issue that perhaps we need to discuss going forward. So what are the solutions for the gaps? The first one is to prioritize the gazettement of the governing regulations by hastening the formulation and the stakeholder input process. They're now at EPRA. Let's have them quickly at National Treasury. Let's have them with stakeholders. In the short term, absolutely. Our view is that the key stakeholders, being the oil marketing companies, the National Treasury, the Ministry of Petroleum and Mining, and EPRA, we think at the very least out of this meeting, there actually should be some resolution to have those stakeholders sit together for purposes of drawing up a binding agreement in lieu of the finalization of these regulations, because that's in the short term, so that we can establish what the timelines for the disbursements of the deferred margins or losses, if you like, will be paid out, and also what kind of formula will be used. Because the prices are going to be, the new prices will be posted on the 14th of this month. It's uncertain as to whether the current losses will be included in the pricing formula. So last but not least is one of the solutions we also think is to actually have a national tax policy that's holistic. And this tax policy we envisage will review and justify all the existing taxes, including those in the petroleum sector. And this, we believe, will help in preventing or mitigating against the arbitrary changes to the tax system. And we also think that the policy will support a predictable business environment, and it will facilitate sustenance and accountability, because what we believe is that there should be equitable taxation across board. Let me finish off by saying that really the oil marketing companies are fully committed to serving the country as they've demonstrated, and what they are seeking is certainly collaboration and certainly support to ensure that they meet the obligations of keeping Wanjiku supplied at least cost. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much, Wanjiku, as well. Your Excellency, sir, allow me to now invite Petroleum Outlets Association of Kenya, Martin Chomba. Welcome, sir.
Thank you. Thank you. The Right Honorable Prime Minister, Raila Odinga, all protocols observed. Good afternoon, everyone. You allow me to speak in not a very official language. I represent a segment of this society and the value chain, as Wanjiku alluded to, the people that are at the very end of the value chain. And these are the people who you find, everybody here comes from a certain village, and you'll find some people with one pump that is the mode, or that provides the mode of propulsion to those items that provide energy, things like the pro boxes, those the borders of those sides, the sientas, they get the things that really propel the economy of the rural. So what we, first of all, I say I want to really thank you, Prime Minister, because of availing yourself even to seek to understand from the horse's mouth the issues bedeviling the industry and on to seek our opinion on what we think can be done to streamline the industry. I will speak very fast because I know we are pressed for time, and I will speak to the event or what has precipitated to the issue that we have out there. First and foremost is that we have a membership of this group because we've been very informal. It has been fragmented. 3 years ago we came together and formed that organization. We've been able to form a membership of around 3,000 petrol station owners across the country. And these people are serving in upwards of 40% of that non-franchised market. And these are the people now who are has been faced by this issue of supply lately. I don't want to talk about the issues of what precipitated the issue of supply because we have enough and competent policymakers here who are able to understand that and relay the same to you. So for me, what I will say, I would want to talk about is in the pricing formula of ERC, there's an issue or rather a lacuna that has existed for some time, and this is what has exposed the non-franchised to kind of a constricted margins, and they're not able to supply as they should and get something out of it. From April last year, the government started the subsidy program, but I think among the negotiations of the subsidy program, one of the things that had to go is the wholesale price cap. So, Prime Minister, what we have been faced with is, from one end of the supply, EPRA tells us you don't sell beyond this market, beyond this value. But on the other side, they have removed the wholesale cap. So what does this do? What it does is, it has given the market a leverage of where they can push the margin depending on the constraints within the market. They can push up the margins to where we are right now. We've gotten to a place whereby you cannot get the product, and if you get it, you'll get it at the pump price. Mark you are getting it and transporting it to the village, and most of us are domiciled in the very remote places. So what has happened is that the end result of this is that most of us have had to close. And when we closed, because this is as easy as it is not theoretical. We shouldn't go trying to get theories as to why we are here, where we are. It is this simple. This market, which is over 40%, have had to close because there are no margins. So when it closes, so what does this do? The people that are in the village, I come from a very remote village in Kirinyaga called Kangaita, up there in the forest. So in the place where I come from, there's a single pump that sells super. So when that guy does not get supply, what happens is that everybody who fuels there have to run to the Kerugoya town, where there's a multinational who is providing some services. And we thank God because they have been keeping us moving. So what happens is that when every person in the village from my county has to go to Kerugoya to get the product, then it is not enough. There's a lot of pressure. And when this pressure mounts, the fuel runs out of that petrol station. So the net effect is that everybody will panic and will believe there is no product in the country. Because the turnaround time for the trucks to go to the depot and get the product probably is 8 hours or so. So at the end of the day, that has been replicated. And Kirinyaga is a very small county, as you know. There are counties which are as big as Central Province. So you can imagine if the villagers have to go to the towns. So this is what has really now brought pressure to the country in a way. Everybody feels that there is a lot of issue. So my advice, or rather what we are advising is, within the policy framework and the value chain, we need to make sure that when we are telling the non-franchised market, which is now has proven to be an integral part of the economy of this country, when we are telling them sell at this price, we must be very careful to tell them we are telling you to sell at this market, at this price, because you have bought at this price. But when we leave that lacuna, it can easily be exploited. Remember, we are a capitalistic system where people are running for profits. Multinationals cannot be faulted. Why? They need to remit to their shareholders something. So at the end of the day, this has been the biggest issue. My recommendation is that even as we look at how we are going to grow the economy, Bwana Prime Minister, because I know God has favored you in terms of the ability to articulate issues, let us have a system whereby we take care of the independent, indigenous, local companies who do not right now have a lot of leverage in terms of even things like haulage. Because if they have enough haulage, they are able to give some to us. Because if you don't have a lot of network, you are able to give to others who don't have network. So in conclusion is, let us look at the place of the independent market, the non-franchised market, with as a part and parcel of national security issues. Because the minute those people are not well, their taps are not wet, then everybody else is not able to operate well. They may not understand a lot of issues because, as I told you, we have been living in a very chaotic industry, and some of us have just trying to bring sanity and to make it formal. And that probably informs the reason why the market, the informal market, has not been put in the mainstream policy framework. But now that we have empirically proven that this market is very, very important for the previously, that needs now to get there. And the good thing is that we have formed formal organizations and formal grassroots structures in terms of marketing, that we are able to engage with the policymakers in a view to make sure that all those people are reached. Today, everybody is looking at us, because they are our members, to give us some hope on when they are likely to get the product. Because even as we are talking, there's still an impasse in terms of delivery of products. That differential that is coming, that the oil market, and we understand the place of the oil marketers, they are not able to sell to product to us right now, because the difference between the cost that they should sell and what EPRA has recommended is very big. And nobody wants to go to that loss. So it's as big, I think this coming month, it should be as big as 40 shillings. Because the prices should be around 175, and we are told to sell, we are telling somebody to sell at 135. Without proper mechanism of guaranteeing that this person will be reimbursed, then we don't want to fault them for not releasing the molecules to us. So we ask that as government and as people who have ear of the government, make sure that as policymakers, you pass this forward. That if we don't take care of that segment of 40%, upward of 40% of the market, then we are likely to have a very, very big issue in terms of supply chain logistics. And it will precipitate to issues that could be even bigger than what we have seen. So with those remarks, I want to really appreciate you for coming to us and listening to us. And any time that you need information from the grassroots, we are the people that will be able to give you that information. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Oh, thank you very much, Martin Chomba, as well. Your Excellency, sir, allow me to invite the National
Your Excellency, the Prime Minister and Africa's High Commissioner for Infrastructure, Raila Odinga, Your Excellency, Governor Nderitu Muredi, the PIA GM, Madam Wanjiko, POC, Chairman Bwana Chomba, colleague industry captains, good afternoon. Good afternoon once again. Mine would be very brief. To echo the discussions that have been exposed by both Wanjiku and Chomba with regards to the nature of volatility in our current business environment. Like I had mentioned earlier, initially we had the COVID-19 pandemic, which saw a drastic drop in petroleum prices. And then suddenly, because of the Russia-Ukraine issue, we have seen the same prices skyrocketing. And at that juncture, then we realized that we have to put in place mechanisms that are agile enough to guarantee our operations in the market. And before I progress much, Bwana Prime Minister, allow me to convey the apologies from my regulator and colleague, Chris Kipto Daniel, who was not able to be with us here this afternoon, and those of our able peers, Andrew Kamau, given the short notice nature of this convention. We said we want to discuss challenges and provide solutions. And from where we sit, one of the solutions that is in place, especially for our friends in pork, is, like you have seen recently, EPRA published Gazette notice for public participation on 30% importation quota by NOC. And principally, this is to come and support the porks of this country by providing sufficient ullage for them through the National Oil Corporation. And in that case, then we will be able to guarantee the security of supply, like the case was with the establishment of NOC. The second, and which I want all of us to think, is that today we have a disruption in the market because of high prices leading to constrained cash flows coupled with the compensation issues. Now, can you just imagine today if you are told somebody has disrupted our supply chain infrastructure in Mombasa, what would happen? And for that reason, then, the next intervention that we are trying to put in place is the establishment of the strategic petroleum reserves. You have seen in the initially proposed draft regulations that the Strategic Petroleum Reserves Fund is going to be created to support the National Oil Corporation to undertake the mandate of guaranteeing security of supply of petroleum products into the country. And I believe that once those things are put in place, then we should be in a better place to talk about predictability and how we can, in an agile format, manage our environment. I think I will end my few comments there. And just to ask my colleague from the Kenya Pipeline Company to stand up and wave. And I hand over back to Governor Nderitu.
Well, thank you, CEO. Let's appreciate Governor once more.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. I should also recognize in the House the Honorable Shabal from Mpigeni Makofi from Mombasa. Sylvester Kasuku is in the House, former MD of Lapset and policy advisor. I wondered, Prime Minister, if I shouldn't really ask Dr. Macharia to even say jambo before we invite you. So, Dr. Macharia, you know he is the one who moves the product on most of our behalf. I think you better just come, Daktari, if to only say hello, and then we invite the Prime Minister.
Your Excellency, the Right Honorable Raila Odinga. I would like also to appreciate my governor, Laikipia, His Excellency Nderitu. That's why he's harassing me. Let me appreciate also the aspirant for Mombasa governorship, Shabal. I think he's also seated here as an investor in Gulf Power, Gulf Energy, etc. Colleagues, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
The only thing I can assure Your Excellency is that Kenya Pipeline is full of product. I don't know where to take it. As we sit here, I have 200 million liters of PMS. I have 160 million liters of diesel, and I have 60 million liters of jet seated. I have Ashirami who is seated in front of you, delivering 120 million liters of super petrol. Then I have a vessel which is also waiting to deliver jet, 120 million in about 2 days. Then Ashrami comes back to deliver another 120 million of super. I don't know where to take it if we don't resolve this matter. So KPC, we are so wet. The country has all the product it requires for the next 1.5 months before I receive anything else. Thank you.
Asante sana Daktari Macharia. Daktari Macharia, kama angeongea Kiswahili ndio mungeshangaa, manake Kiswahili chake ni sanifu sana. Nataka niwashukuru nyote kwa mazungumzo haya, na basi Daktari, I know he had tried to coach me how to say it in Swahili. Nilikuwa nataka niwaulize basi tusimame ili tumkaribishe Mheshimiwa Raila Amolo Odinga atuongeleshe. Karibu sana Waziri Mkuu.
Now, be seated. Now, I really don't know where to start here. Once upon a time, in my earlier incarnation, one of my early incarnations, I was in charge of petroleum, of energy in this country. So I've been listening to those who have talked here before. Asiri Wanjiku, not our usual constitutional Wanjiku, talk, and she was talking a completely different language from the other, another language completely, when he was telling us about his experience in the village in Kirinyaga. And then now we hear the KPC talk another different language. Somebody is telling you that I'm so full up. I've eaten too much that I'm almost bursting with food. And somebody out there saying I'm starving. There's no food here. Is it the same world, the same country? But we all know the cause of what we are going through here. It's a global issue, as you know. Caused, you can say, artificially. In my view, because of a war that did not have to happen. I don't know whether some wars have to happen, but because of that. Another thing is our preparedness as a country to deal with the situations like this. Because you must know that this kind of situation will always be happening in the future. So a country must all the time be prepared for any kind of emergencies. When I was a Prime Minister, I constituted a task force on the petroleum industry. And the guy who was chairing it is with us here, Mr. Elisha Kasuku. That Mr. Kasuku. And they dealt with a number of issues. One is ullage allocation and operational issues. The other one was taxes. The other one was petroleum products pricing control. Another one was storage and strategic reserve. Another one was quality control. And the sixth one was licensing of marketers and operators. So this is, they dealt in detail about these issues about the importation, storage, and distribution of petroleum products in the country, so that the customer or the consumer does not have to suffer unnecessarily because of issues that have been artificially caused here. the issue of the issue of the wholesaler and the relationship between the wholesaler and the retailer. Here you've got the big marketers who have got a bit of cushion because they've got the financial muscle, you know, to be able to pay or to borrow from the banks and bring in large stocks which they can, if the small scale dealer like the one in Kirinyaga cannot get, they then give their own outlets. So you now have these issues of monopoly, that you are the wholesaler, they also are the retailer at the same time. You know, competing with a small retailer out there in Kirinyaga. Now you ask yourself, je, hiyo ni ungwana? Hiyo ni ungwana kweli? So it is an issue that really needs to be dealt with properly, and because the government, of course, has also the strategic, the reserve to come in at times like this. But the government also does not have any other source. Government has to collect taxes from the people. And if the prices are much higher than the taxes the government is collecting, where does the government get that additional fund to pay? So this is an issue that requires a much more extensive national discussions, that we come up truly with a solution so that we deal with these issues, not like an emergency, that we are responding to an emergency, but we have a proper roadmap how we deal with these issues even in the future. I think this would be my proposal, that we cushion the consumer from the suffering which is going on right now at the moment. In future, I've also talked to our friend from the Kenya Pipeline Corporation. This country needs to address the issues of strategic reserves properly. And that we need to have strategic reserves at the port but inland. Because as you know, an enemy can just come and go down to Mombasa and bomb your reserve there at the port. The country will be completely paralyzed. Then they will just march into you the way Russia has marched into Ukraine. There's nothing you can do because you have no fuel. All your tanks cannot move. So we need to do this as a matter of agency, to begin to put up strategic reserves across the country in places where they are not vulnerable, so that we are not taken by surprise in future. I'm happy that at least the government has now responded temporarily, and that is going to help to ease the suffering of our people for now. But I think that all the stakeholders in this industry need to sit down and work out a more comprehensive program of how to deal with this kind of situation in the future, in terms of importation and distribution across board. And if this is done, in my view, we will not be able to face a situation like this in the near future. It's a situation that is avoidable. It can be done, and it can only be done with cooperation among all the stakeholders across this supply chain. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Let us appreciate again the Right Honourable Raila Odinga. We want to come to a close, ladies and gentlemen, and again we want to really thank you for this presentation. We believe ourselves that the way to it's not enough just to highlight problems out there on the political podium, that it is far better, frankly, to sit together as sector, as industry, and craft solutions together. I think we are all sympathetic to what Mr. Shomba did say, that the selling price is fixed, but what they are buying us at is no longer fixed, and that therefore their margins have been squeezed to the point that they are closing. And therefore, I think that this is an immediate thing for us to address, and we all agree with Wanjiku and the Right Honourable Prime Minister about this question of the stabilization fund and the operationalization of these rules. Ladies and gentlemen, we propose to bring it to a close. May I request you to remain seated to allow the Prime Minister an opportunity to leave, and then the rest of us can. So let us appreciate the Right Honourable Prime Minister Raila Odinga and thank him